Welcome this morning to agenda review. We'll be looking at agendas for next Wednesday, December the 11th. We have a county commission agenda. We also have a fire district number 1 agenda. So Tanya, take it away.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. Good morning, Commission and Chairman. Thank you for that introduction. So for next Wednesday on the regular agenda for county announcements, we will Nicole will talk about the sheriff food boxes, and the sheriff's office will be present there to talk about that. So, okay, we will have recognition of Sedgwick County retirement, and that will be Karen Bailey, who has been at Sedgwick County for 22 years. So that will be a nice celebration.
Yeah. Next
up, we will accept a resignation from the Sedgwick County Juvenile Corrections Advisory Board, and that will be Commissioner Pete Meitzner's. That's his appointment. So, okay, and then we'll move into new business. Consideration of the ARPA plan, spending plan update, and there'll be some authorization of resolutions related to the revenue replacement and CIP plan. I was going to kind of speak to that at a high level, but I understand that Lindsay wants to speak to that, so I will let her speak to it.
She understands correctly. I do want to speak to this. This is very exciting and also a little bit scary. So with a change in presidential administration and the fact that we have heard that it is likely that that administration will be looking for funding to do tax cuts, to fund tax cuts, we are concerned that there will be clawbacks of unspent funds. I also have flashbacks, not good flashbacks, to CARES, when, if you'll recall, in the midst of that, we were having changing guidance every 11 days. And so we want to end ARPA now in 2024 and just be done with it. And so we don't have to worry about changing FAQs or changing guidance as we go forward. So that does make a few things more complicated. I have detailed this in an email to you Monday, the week of Thanksgiving, so you don't have to take too many copious notes today. But just so you know, there were 4 projects, 4 things that the commission had authorized using ARPA to pay for past 2024. The first was obviously the lease for this building for Ruffin Space. The second was the sheriff jail lock and camera CIP project, for which there's about 5.8 million remaining on that CIP project that has not yet been spent. And then there were also 2 contracts through the district court. One was with bids, so the Board of Indigent Defense for those second chair attorneys. If you'll remember, those are necessary to have some of the more serious criminal law cases worked through. So we still have some of those from the backlog that are being addressed. Same thing on the family law side. There were domestic conciliators that were contracted with through 2026 on the family law side. So those contracts are in place. But what we think ought to happen is, instead of paying for those things from ARPA, we would like to instead do revenue replacement. So we would transfer the balance of those projects plus the remaining ARPA funds. And that's going to be a bit technical, so bear with me. And if you'd rather I just do this next Wednesday, I can, but it's involved, and I want you to understand what we're going to be asking for. But we would take all of that, which right now is roughly, the balance of the fund is $17 million that has not been spent. We would do revenue replacement for that amount. The request is going to be that you authorize $10 million next Wednesday to be done immediately. And then we are going to ask in that same resolution that you delegate authority to the county manager to, because all of this activity has to happen by December 31st of this calendar year. We want you to authorize the county manager to take whatever the balance of those funds are and authorize that on December 27th, which is when we will have all of the final payroll postings done. You'll have all of the final invoices and all of those things paid. And we would like him to be able to authorize that balance. And then the resolution spells out that I would have 1 business day to tell you what that precise figure is once the journal entries are completed. Once that is done, we would then suggest, through a second resolution that's on next week's agenda, that you take some of that cash, the $5.8 million that I referenced to that sheriff CIP. We would take that from the general fund, now that it's got all of this extra money from revenue replacement. We would take it from the general fund and move it to the CIP fund and just treat it like a normal CIP project. Now, that still leaves your rough and lease, and it still leaves those district court contracts for 25 and 26. Again, those contracts are already in place. So what we would ask you to do is allow us to take the necessary budget actions in 2025 to move the budget authority from general fund contingencies to the facilities budget for the rough and lease and to the district court budget for those domestic conciliator and bids contracts, and then authorize us, and we start the 2026 budget process in February, that we would be allowed to increase the base budgets for district court and for facilities by those amounts that were planned for before in your 2026 spend plan. So that way we cover everything that we're already obligated for, but we now have this excess cash that's in the general fund to cover those going forward. That way we're only subject to general fund rules. There's no risk of clawback or any changes to frequently asked questions and significant guidance changes. So it is involved, it is complex, and I'm sorry for that. And I'm sorry to spring this on you, but when we talked about this with the Government Finance Officers Association, they have a federal funds forum call that they do every 2 weeks. We are one of many governments that is going to take this approach for just, it's the safest route forward. And our federal consultant, the grant group that we've been using since we started with CARES, also thinks that this is the safest route forward. So what questions can I answer?
Yeah, makes sense. Is there any liability to the taxpayer by going this route?
No, in fact, it actually reduces potential liability to taxpayers.
Okay. Any other questions?
You will have so it's spelled out. Everything that I just told you is in the agenda item itself, but then yes, when I have my PowerPoint for you next week, there are going to be various slides that walk through everything I just said and the specific requests that we're asking of you. So you'll have that. And I can send that in advance if that would be helpful.
The alternative to having empowering the manager, we could have a meeting if we wanted to.
We would need you to have a special meeting on Friday, December 27th.
So that's another option we could have.
Yes.
I'm not against the idea, although I do trust the manager to handle this, but I don't know that I mind necessarily having a special meeting either. I think that's maybe in some ways better.
No difference to me. I will tell you that in the resolution that's been drafted, it does set an amount that is not to exceed 10.4 million. So he is capped on his authority that he can transfer, but it is literally just whatever the balance of ARPA is that's not spent as of that date.
I'm just thinking about public perception on this. I think
Understood.
in some ways, a special meeting kind of maybe checks some boxes in terms of the public's support to how we handle this. Second of all, at the end of December, then ARPA is done.
Done.
So
Not
we don't
gonna
have to
have
talk
a
about
party.
ARPA next year at all.
No, except for when we go through the audit. And I mean, you might hear my happy scream from wherever you are in the county.
I think this is a fine approach to, again, help our taxpayers as much as possible and help our fiscal status as much as possible. I just wish that, apparently they handed out so much money that we're being creative on how to use it. It's just, again, not to. I'll just say that I wish the feds would stop, but anyway, enough. We'll do it. We're going to do it because it's best for our taxpayers. Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Lindsay. So again, on Monday, the 21st, I think it was, you sent that email and there's an attachment to that email. So if we want to have some added reference before we meet again.
Well, and the draft agenda item yesterday too, everything I just told you actually was bulleted out in this. It's a lengthy background.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think you've got more details there too.
Very good. Okay. Thank you. Tony?
Okay, next agenda item then is the report of boards of bids and contracts, and there were 5 items on that. Okay, then we move into consent, and there are several items related to public works. So the first item then, item E, is the purchase of right-of-way, and that's to allow for a turn lane improvement for the Charlotte Pipe Company, and that will be at 119th Street West, and then half mile north of 53rd Street North. And that's a cost of $1,500 to the county. Item F then is another right-of-way purchase at 69th and 85th Street North. And that will allow for a full width paved shoulder and flatter side slopes, of course, to enhance the safety of this particular route. And that will be at a cost of $1,600. Okay, item G is a resolution to add 3 roads, Homestead Drive, Eagle Crest, and Eagle Crest Court to Union Township Road System. And that is at no cost to the county. Item H, okay, the next 5 items are going to be very similar. So let me kind of explain this one, and then I think I can shortly brief on the other ones. So this particular item is a resolution between the city of Keachai to annex certain road right-of-ways. So Public Works and the city of Keachai work together to identify several public right-of-ways that are adjacent to the city limits, but not yet annexed into their city. Of course, this presents law enforcement and road maintenance issues due to the proximity between the streets, or excuse me, to the city. And so both parties agreed on the annex. So there's no cost to the county. And again, this is between the city of Keachai and the county. And Daniel, I don't know if you want to speak to.
Yeah, I got a
this.
couple of questions.
Okay, go ahead.
Daniel, thanks for being here, man. Obviously with Keachai and then Park City's item I, there were some connecting roads that had Wichita involvement in it. Have we been able to link up Matt Ginsby and Wichita from Keachai, and then Sean Fox and their public works folks in Wichita? Have those conversations happened?
Yes. So we do have Wichita on this consent agenda as well. And so there were some roads between Park City and Wichita, and then also Goddard and Wichita. 45th Street was split between Park City and Wichita at the half mile line. That's how they decided they wanted to handle that. And then 167th Street in front of Eisenhower High School, that road is mostly split down the center line of the road. That's how they decided to move forward with that.
So the discussions did take place. Wichita was involved in those discussions. And okay.
Yes. And so all of the entities that are on the consent agenda item here, they've all been notified that we're hearing it next Wednesday. I've talked to them a little bit more about that, and I think they're all good with it. But that's why we also broke out 167th Street separately on the consent agenda item, because that one was the most contentious. But I don't think there's going to be anyone speaking out against it as far as from either of those two cities.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay, so as Daniel stated, so then the next items are same thing between the city of Park City, city of Wichita, and then city of Wichita and Goddard. That makes sense. I mean, and I'm happy to speak individually to those, but that's how that worked out on all the way through K.
And just a little bit more information there as well. So this finalizes our annexations that we were going over this year. We had a couple back in October, a lot of the cities. And so this finishes that out completely. And so once this process finishes, we'll have 27.4 miles coming that are being annexed by various cities. And if you'd like more information on that, I've got some handouts.
I guess my question would be, there's still some, is this all of the roads that are adjacent to annexed properties, or is there still more to go?
There are more to go, but we are not pursuing those at this time. We met when we started this process back in December of last year. We went through and looked at which roads made sense. And so if there was a road that was eligible to be annexed, but maybe it would be a road that Wichita would only have a small portion of, a 0.1 mile, 0.4 miles, and we're on either side, it doesn't make sense for us to hand over those maintenance responsibilities to Wichita or any other city if we're going to be in the area and taking care of everything around it. So we did our best to identify the roads that made sense with these cities.
Okay.
So you think there'll be another conversation next year, or are we done for a bit here?
I think we're done for a bit. I think there are some roads that we've identified that if more development occurs along those roads and we can close some of those gaps and we can have an entire mile annexed or a half mile annexed, I think we'll address those as they pop up with the city of Wichita. But I don't intend meeting with all the cities again next year.
So this is maintenance by and large. Conversations have taken place with fire, sheriff's office, things like that, because this is where this gets really tricky and muddy, is who has responsibility where. So they're also very heavily involved in these processes, and we'll understand what takes place here, particularly the sheriff's office.
Yeah, well, we'll prepare maps typically at the very beginning of the year to show which roads are now on our system, and we can share that with everyone, sheriff and fire.
No, it's just these annexation things are complicated. It's a patchwork out in the community and the county, and especially in my district. So I appreciate it.
Okay, I apologize. I said through K, but it's actually through L because it's similar agenda items. Okay, moving on to item M. These are 3 annual developmental disability affiliation agreements, and this is with Arrowhead West, Ketch, and Starkey. And so these are agreements that serve the intellectual developmental disability services in Sedgwick County for those that need those services. And this basically is so this is the threshold that meets the requirement to go before the commission for approval. So, and I'm going to defer to Tim if you have anything you want to add to that, Tim. Okay, and then item N, this is our agreement on project access. So it's the agreement with Central Plains Healthcare Partnership and the City of Wichita. Our funding agreement is $200,000 on this. Okay, then item O, this is item O and item P are similar. This is an amendment for the cost sharing agreement, and this will extend this agreement until January 31st to 2025. This is agreement between the city and county for the completion of the Jensen Hughes deliverable, and then for invoicing payments and reimbursements. And so then you want me to go through item P or okay. So then item P then is the deliverable on the analysis and reporting on the project. So again, that pushes that deliverable until January 31st, 2025. And then I'll let Rusty speak to that if he wants to.
Rusty, we had put a hold on commissioner calendars for a specific day in a couple of weeks because of potential of Jensen Hughes coming into town to brief us and to deliver this report. Do you have an update on any of that?
I'm waiting for communication with the city, and then we'll try to finalize that hopefully today or within the next day or two.
Okay. Quick update. You'll look on your calendars and you'll see a hold the 16th in the afternoon. And we're trying to work them coming in for one day and brief the city with their council and their mayor, and then brief us in the afternoon. So the 16th is when the other options that made sense were in January. Really going to wait that long, see if we can get it done quicker. Get on the other side of this thing. So you'll look on your calendars and see it on the 16th.
The amendments to the 2 agreements simply, we want to make sure that they were originally set to end around the end of October, and needed to have a little more time to finish analysis and finish reports. And it just made sense talking to legal counsel to push the end date out till January 31st. We had plenty of time to receive all the deliverables, receive the invoices, make payments, invoice Wichita for their half. And so that's why we just pushed the date back that far. But we expect to have deliverables well before the end of January, and probably, and obviously this month.
Hopefully. Yeah.
Hopefully this month.
We're hoping. Not guaranteed yet, but we're hoping.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Rusty. Appreciate it.
Okay, item R are position reclassifications. And so this is for various personnel in the county counselor's office and emergency communications. Item Q then is pay adjustments for various personnel in county counselor's office and county clerk's office. And then we get into regular and routine business. And that is it for the regular agenda of December 11th.
You, okay, commissioners, any questions on the county commission agenda? I think there are some emails on those items Q and R that have come across, I believe, from. Okay. Okay, fire district, and we do have,
We do have a couple items on fire district.
Okay.
Okay, first item under new business. This is proposed amendments to the 2024 International Code. So I talked to Rusty this morning. This is actually going to move to the regular BOCC agenda for next week. And my understanding is this will be to set the public hearing, not actually hold the public hearing. So I'm going to defer to Rusty to see if he has anything additional he wants to add there.
Fred?
so,
Yeah, so yeah, this was cleaned up. This is, we need to set the public hearing. I think, Fire Marshal Crisp is scheduled to brief you all on the, code adoption next week.
Right.
Most of you anyway. So Wednesday, you'll set the public hearing, I believe, for January 8th. And then, he'll brief you next week. And then on January 8th is, there'll be an agenda item on January 8th to hold the public hearing and adopt the code at that time.
Okay.
So this will all be cleaned up. This will be on the regular BOC agenda because you'll be adopting a county fire code, not a fire district.
I
code.
see.
Our legal counsel is,
Interesting. That makes sense.
Yeah, Chairman, I just may supplement what Rusty said there. Just because for it to be enforceable, the Board of County Commissioners regularly sitting as the Board of County Commissioners is who has home rule powers to adopt that. Whereas when you're sitting as a fire district governing body, you don't have that same power.
Okay.
Can I just clarify? So you're saying that we'll have the hearing here on the fire agenda, but the BOCC needs to adopt
no, the agenda item will read completely different. It will say, for next week's agenda item, whenever you get the final document, it will say that you're going to set the public hearing. That's all that's going to be done next Wednesday.
Okay.
You're going to set the public hearing, which is what you normally do with the building department.
Right.
And the hearing will be set for January 8th. And so no further action will be taken until January 8th when you have the public hearing and move to adopt the code.
So
But
just
you'll be briefed
of,
next, he'll come in and brief you next week. I believe most of you are on the calendar. And so there's some time there between if there's questions to be answered, et cetera.
is there some deadline to adopt this code on the 8th?
Fred, why don't you come up and just sit by or grab the mic, I guess.
Please, yeah.
Good morning.
Morning.
Brad Chris, Fire Marshal, Sedgwick County Fire District number 1. There's Commissioner Howell, there's really no deadline per se. We do like to try to keep it tight with all the other municipalities and of course MABCD that's moving forward with the 24 codes. But I wouldn't say that there's necessarily a deadline that January 8th has to be the day. It could be anytime in the near future.
I guess I bring this up because it's just, I'm not saying this would happen. Let's just say something came up during the public hearing we wanted to address. Now we're making sausage from the bench to massage a code to adopt it that day. The very next week, we have a new commission seated. A situation could happen. I was just wondering why we don't just push this off until the new commission seated and have the hearing and potentially adopt the code when we're ready after the new commission is seated because of that potential challenge of having a hearing by one commission and it be adopted by a different commission a week later or whatever. Not that I think it's going to happen, but it could, right? So
It certainly could. I would be shocked because we've done a lot of really good due diligence with all the interested parties. I can't imagine anybody would want to come and try to throw a wrinkle in the system, but you're right, Commissioner, it could happen.
One suggestion might be is your briefing next week. If we see something in there that maybe if a commissioner sees something in there, then maybe we have that discussion that we might want to push this thing back. And I think based on the conversation we had, you don't think there's going to be.
No, but I'm also not opposed to pushing it back another week or two. That doesn't bother me at all, Commissioner.
I know I've got a couple of outstanding fire code issues I'm probably going to bring up during our discussion.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I don't know if we ought to try to incorporate any changes in this adoption of this code or not, but there's at least a couple of topics out there I'm aware of that I think we ought to at least discuss and potentially address them in this code adoption. So it may not be as, I hate to say this, may not be as smooth as maybe you would like, but I do think these conversations are really important.
Absolutely.
Okay, so with that being said, I mean, the briefings, you're briefing us next week. If we're going to push back to another commission, there's no reason to brief this commission if we're going to have to brief the new commission. What do you think? I mean, Commissioner Howard, do you want to wait and have these discussions and see if you think it's relevant to push it back? And I'm open to that idea. I think Fire Marshal Crisp is too. I just want to make sure that we're not.
I don't think there's any harm in briefing this commission, but if we perceive there's things need to be adjusted or changed, I think that obviously needs to push it back to
Okay.
a later date than the 8th.
I would voice that if Commissioner Howell has 2 or 3 items that he's gonna present to us all, that we just wait until he presents them to the new commission. You said everything's fine, but Commissioner Howell's saying he's got a couple of things. So
Justin, what do you think?
Chairman, just an idea that I would have, and I think the manager's office can help in terms of communicating with you perhaps on this is if, because the agenda is going to go out today. And I think you could have it set the public hearing at the date that's been proposed, but there could always be a motion next week to amend the date the public hearing would be set to, or you could just not take action to set the public hearing. But you could certainly move it back further into January or February if that would be the will of the board, and we could adjust them.
So there'll be let's have the briefings and then we can go from there. And then I'm not opposed as well to pushing it back as long as you don't think this is an urgent, a week or two won't hurt. Okay. All right. We'll have the conversations this next week, and then we'll go from there.
Okay. So we'll leave this agenda item on new business on the regular agenda, tentatively set for January 8th, and then make adjustments next Wednesday if needed.
Yeah. And the other thing too is that if we do need to push it back, the Fire Marshal Chris can brief the 2 new commissioners that are coming in separately too, and get them up to speed. So I think we can move this thing forward. Okay. Tanya?
Okay, the next item is the report of boards and bids, and we had one item for our agenda on that.
One item?
And regular business. Actually, there's no other regular business, it's just adjournment.
Okay. Any executive sessions planned?
Justin, there may be an executive session.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Very good. Okay. Anything else? Who's here? Chief, anything? Go Cats. Okay, we are good. Hey, have a good weekend. It's going to be warm, 60 degrees this weekend. Enjoy it.
And there's an orchestra
And
performing
there's
downstairs.
There's an orchestra performing downstairs. Yep, we'll be there. Thanks. Have a good weekend.